Morning, investors. My name is Ari Gutman. It is great to be on here with you for yet another TIpRanks webinar, where we're going to be diving briefly into our economic backdrop, get a good sense of what exactly is going on, and then dive right into the TIpRanks Expert Center. That is a tool I want to highlight for each and every one of you today, just based on the fact that we may be heading into choppier waters when it comes to market volatility. This is your first webinar. I want to share with you that every single webinar is hosted on Wednesday for our basic users, but we also have webinars on Mondays in which we go a little bit more into detail. That's for our premium and ultimate users, but it's quite a scoop to jump on at the beginning of the week as opposed to in the middle of the week. Without further ado, I want to jump right in because we've already been seeing some choppier trading today, or yesterday rather, and into today with futures, just based on the fact that earnings season is underway. Of course, typically with earnings, we usually see what I like to call emotional investing. We have a lot of volatility when it comes to earnings, especially during a time like right now when there's a lot of economic uncertainty added to the mix. I want to take a step back and actually take the economic backdrop approach to how we're about to pick out the tool of the week and why we're picking out the Expert Center to highlight this week. So, as of last week, we had a brand new inflationary reading come in. Inflation was expected to come in at 5.2%. That's what the economists were expecting. And of course, we had a nice little rally thereafter because inflation actually came in as of the last consumer price index report at 5%. So that gave us a nice little bump in momentum, some excitement. Now, we also had a couple of other data sets that came out that actually took myself and a lot of other economists by surprise. And I want to highlight them now for you because we had jobless claims as of last Thursday come out. Now, jobless claims came in at 198,000 jobless claims. So those are first-time filers filing those claims. On Thursday, that report came out. And what that essentially means, because we were expecting jobless claims to come in at 195,000, it means that the economy is beginning to cool, aka what the Federal Reserve has been doing, hiking interest rates, has working. Now, I will share with you that months back, we were supposed to see the Federal Reserve come out more hawkish than they have been, but we did have a banking crisis. Again, I'm sure you're all well aware of the banking crisis that took place weeks ago, but that tone of the Federal Reserve has been closely watched. And for investors, especially myself, I'm always listening into how the Federal Reserve is speaking, what they're saying, how they're saying it, that tonality that they're using, because right around the corner here, as we enter into May, we're going to get another Federal Reserve interest rate hike decision. The big question is, will they hike rates or will they actually pause, potentially pivot, is the word that we always hear when it comes to the Federal Reserve. Now, I am not in the camp that the Federal Reserve will pivot, but certainly perhaps not this next interest rate hike decision, but the following one, they may pause. Now, I want to reiterate that those jobless claims that came out, which again, 198,000 jobless claims filed, that shows a cooling in the economy. Now, we also had an employment report come out not too long ago that also showed that we had 236,000 jobs added to the U.S. economy. And we were supposed to see, or expecting rather, 239,000 jobs to be added to the U.S. economy. Again, another sign that the economy is cooling. That's what the Federal Reserve has wanted. Now, we have an inflationary goal to get inflation down to 2%. How do we proceed to do that from where we are today is, again, hiking those interest rates. So I am in the camp that the next Federal Reserve interest rate hike, we very well may see another 25 basis point rate hike. Now, because we had the banking crisis, just before the banking crisis, we actually had a lot of sentiment that the Federal Reserve would come out with a 50 basis point rate hike. Then the banking crisis had occurred. Of course, there's a lot of fear that was added into the market. We saw the Federal Reserve proceed with a 25 basis point rate hike. And that is why I'm now going to safely assume that they may come out this go round with another 25 basis point rate hike. Thereafter that, we may see a pause for the next few interest rate hike decisions, just to see how, in fact, the economy is operating and whether it continues to cool. However, what we will see for a prolonged period of time, and this is not new news, I've been saying that we're going to be living in an environment of higher interest rates as well as higher inflation for a prolonged period of time. So how exactly now do we invest in such an environment? Because I will share that with higher interest rates and higher inflation, a prolonged period of time, it will certainly impact businesses. And we've been seeing that for quite some time within the tech sector. We've had a lot of tech companies perform layoffs, and that is now what I think will essentially happen is sector by sector layoffs. And ultimately, we could be at the end of 2023 into 2024 with a light to mild recession. That is how I see it. And so now the investment approach that I take, just given that backdrop, that economic backdrop, is going to be one of a cautionary tale, if you will, to share with you that we are going to be highlighting the Expert Center because there is no reason any of us should be investing alone during this type of economic environment. What do I mean by that? Now, TIpRanks is here for each and every investor to jump on and utilize our tools. Now, the TIpRanks tools that we have are not the tools that you might get on a different site that say, buy this stock right now, it's going to 10x. The tools that we have on TIpRanks are meant to empower every single investor, which makes me excited because if I invest into a particular company, I want to make sure that I've done all of my due diligence on that company. Now, the Expert Center is a place on TIpRanks where I can actually generate not only a lot of stock ideas, but a lot of confidence in what I'm investing into. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with all of you. Now, here we are on the homepage of TIpRanks. The very first spot I want to go to is experts. We have our top analysts. We have top financial bloggers, top performing corporate insiders, top hedge fund managers, top research firms, and top individual investors. Now, I'm going to dive into just a few of them today, but I encourage every single one of you to dive in a little bit deeper here after today's webinar. So I want to just jump right into top analysts, because now, as I've shared, it's all about generating not only stock ideas, but more confidence into what exactly we are investing into. So I have now in front of me a compiled list of the top analysts here on TIpRanks. And I can go ahead and, knowing my economic backdrop, which we just went over, actually dive into some of the sectors here that are going to be safer, say, if we do in fact land in a light to mild recession. And just for today's webinar, I will click on healthcare, and we'll see a filtered list now here of our top performing analysts when it comes to the healthcare sector. Now, I always want to go ahead and benchmark that. I like to benchmark it to the S&P here. Now we can hover over any one of these tabs. You'll notice I'm already hovering over success rate. And I want to give that a click because now I'm just filtering through here in terms of the success rating of these analysts, which of these analysts I want to start to dive into and do some more due diligence alongside them on the investments that they've been rating recently. So just for the sake of today's webinar, I will click on Raphael here. And I want to scroll down, and now I have a list of stock coverage from our analyst, Raphael. But now what this list really is for me as a retail investor here is a list of stock ideas. So I can now jump into any one of the stocks that Raphael is actually covering. Again, just for the sake of today's webinar, we'll jump right into West Pharmaceutical. And we can take a look at some other indicators now that we have on our right-hand side. We have across the board analyst consensus of moderate buy, bullish blogger sentiment, increased hedge fund activity. I always like to start off here on the stock analysis page about a year out, or at least year to date, just to get a general feel for how this position is performing. And in knowing it's a pharmaceutical play, and in knowing our economic backdrop, again, likely whether it's utilities, whether it's consumer goods, whether it's healthcare, we get a lot of these sectors that are performing better, say, than tech sector, because of the fact that regardless of whether or not the economy is up, down, left or right, anything in the middle, we all know that healthcare is going to perform just based off the fact that the demand is there. Now, I can certainly dive into the analyst forecasts. And I actually want to go right down to now the best analyst that is going to be covering our stock here, West Pharmaceutical, because I want to continuously be investing with the best. I'm going to go back to our expert center here, and I want to go down to top financial bloggers. Again, we have a nice list here of bloggers that are compiled on TIpRanks for every single one of us to check into, take a look at their success rating, take a look at what they specifically talk about within their blogs, the stocks that they're covering. Now, I want to go here because I know a lot of us, or at least I certainly do, we can go to Google, I can type in, top stocks to buy right now. I can, from Google, then somehow land into, say, Seeking Alpha. From Seeking Alpha, now I have a blog and I'm reading through the blog and everything looks really nice, fine and dandy, and I may proceed to invest. But thanks to TIpRanks, now I can go one step further. So just for the sake of today's webinar, I know that there is a YouTube channel out there as well as a blog of Dividend Diplomats. And I want to go there because I personally, if you've been on my webinars, will know that I'm actually a dividend and value investor. But what's nice about this is I can go right on to the Dividend Diplomats profile here that we have on TIpRanks, and you can see firsthand, as I mentioned, they are bloggers on Seeking Alpha. They also have a YouTube channel. What's nice here, though, is now I'm getting another look at whether or not I want to continue to follow the Dividend Diplomats. What is their success rate? What stocks have they been covering? Which ones should I perhaps want to add to my own watch list to also take a look into? And so now we're getting some, again, stock ideas. But this is all in our expert center here underneath experts, top financial bloggers. I would encourage every single investor that's on with me right now, after we get off this webinar, to take a look at what bloggers you're following. Where are you getting your stock advice from? Come to TIpRanks, plug in their names, plug in their blogs, find them here on TIpRanks and see how they're performing, see how they're stacked up against other bloggers. Are you following the best of the best? Or are you just following someone that had really good SEO work and somehow landed on the top of, say, Google or Seeking Alpha, wherever you're finding your stock advice? Because that is exactly what investing is all about. It is about gaining as much information as you possibly can and putting it onto the table as an investor, to scrutinize it, to analyze it, to look into it, to do your own due diligence. Never take anything for face value, because that is exactly how mishaps happen. You could lose money. And what we're here at TIpRanks doing for all of you is providing you with the tools for each and every one of you to be empowered as an investor to do your own due diligence. Now, as you take that economic backdrop that we briefly spoke about, and then recognize that we may see a choppier, say, 6 months to a year ahead of us, the question becomes, how do we invest? And where do we look when we're looking to invest in particular investments? That due diligence will be necessary for you as an investor to gain confidence in what you're investing into. Know that it's across the board with our experts. Now, we highlighted just a few today, but of course you can look into top insiders. You can even look into the top investors across TIpRanks. Now, that is just another valuable resource for, again, stock ideas. Once you get your stock idea, you go right to that stock page and you start looking at other indicators that we have here on TIpRanks for you to utilize all of our tools. Now, investors, it's a privilege and an honor to be on here for yet another webinar. It wouldn't be a TIpRanks webinar without me sharing with you that an email is on its way to you as we speak, with a nice surprise for you to take advantage of as we enter choppier waters. I will share with you that next week, the Federal Reserve is entering their blackout period. Come the beginning of May, we're going to get that next interest rate hike decision. So stay away from emotional investing. Join us on TIpRanks. Perform all your due diligence, utilize all of our tools, make smart decisions while we're in more volatile times. Investors, thank you so much, and I look forward to joining you all again next week.